Welcome to the Aletheia Advisory podcast. Aletheia Advisory is an optimization and innovation-focused background screening consulting practice. Our team,
Nancy Alt,
Kym Kurey,
Shyrock,
Lukach,
and Terry Corley, consists of deep knowledge industry experts that help our clients to not only meet today's challenges head on,
but to chart a course for increased scale, growth, and sustainability.
We pride ourselves on being client-focused and value-driven, which is precisely why we're doing this podcast.
Our goal is to provide value to those that utilize and provide background screening services with invaluable insights from our panel of experts.
Our background screening world, as we know it, is constantly changing. We're bringing you a special series called the Aletheia Dialogs.
Each segment will feature a one-on-one conversation that reflects on the latest trends and background screening considerations for today and tomorrow.
These dialogues provide original insights into the screening industry with everything from the latest trends in U.S. and global background screening
sales and marketing strategies,
to practical operations and compliance topics. Now, here's our host, Terry Lukach.
Hello and welcome to the Aletheia Advisory Dialogues. I am your host and moderator, Terry Lukach. The purpose is for us to gather together as a community online to talk to the industry's greatest thinkers and sharpest minds about how the elements of background screening are changing our world. We want to thank you and acknowledge you for your participation as the audience and making this series a success. We look forward to your questions and future participation in these ongoing dialogues. So if you have questions, if you have suggestions for us, topics you want to hear about, or your overall views on these dialogues, please send us your feedback to info@aletheiaadvisory.com. We'd love to hear from you. So let's get started and transition over to my interview with our honored guest. As a special treat today, we are going to have a conversation with one of the leading experts in international compliance and privacy as it relates to background screening. Someone who has really distinguished herself as an exemplary sharer of information and knowledge. Her name is Nancy Alt. She is a 30-year veteran in the industry. Nancy is an active member of the Professional Background Screening Association, former chair of the Background Screening Credentialing Council, and actively involved in the Government Relations and Industry Practices Committees. She is a member of International Association of Privacy Professionals and is a certified information program manager. In addition, she is a member of the Substance Abuse Program Administrators Association. Nancy is joining us right now. Great to have you on the program, Nancy.
Thanks, Tara. I appreciate the kind introduction.
As I mentioned, I am really looking forward to this conversation. The purpose of these dialogues is to bring to our audience unique and important influential voices, and you certainly are that voice. Let's begin by understanding, how did you become interested in compliance?
Well, I surely didn't choose it as a path. My career choices, I believe, really led me to in this direction. I started out in the electric utility industry, and I worked in quality assurance, and I did drug and alcohol testing for 10 years, both in regulated and unregulated programs. I believe that experience there, piqued my interest and showed me just how important it is to do these type of backgrounds, where you're mitigating risk out there. Then I moved into the background screening industry. In that industry, I worked in operations in a myriad of positions. I worked managing case registration, records, verifications, driver qualification, fingerprints. So I had a lot of exposure all the way around, and that obviously led to me understanding a lot of different regulations and having to make sure that we are in compliance with all of those. Then I changed hats a little bit and I actually became director of global compliance, where I was actually managing the overall compliance for the entire division. So, overall, I've had 30 years between the two industries, and the last 5 years have been dedicated also to privacy. So I actually love what I do, and I believe that it mitigates risk out there and helps companies. So I guess really at the end of it, I like following rules.
I do too. That's great. Well, with an ever-changing world with ever-changing regulations and the need to comply and balance with those regulations globally, what are your thoughts and insights into new regulations around the globe?
I think what we're going to see, I mean, they're going to be nonstop, but I believe the change that we're seeing now and the focus is really on consumer rights. We've seen that for a while now, for a number of years, and I don't really see that trend stopping. In the US, it started really, well, in a big way with ban the box, and the fair chance laws. We've now got 36 states and over 150 counties or local jurisdictions that have some form or fashion of ban the box laws. For those that may be watching this that aren't familiar with ban the box, basically it's that companies have to take the checklist off. They can't ask any more criminal questions or conviction questions on their applications. And the whole premise behind that is really ensuring that people get a fair chance to actually show their qualifications prior to somebody making a biased decision based on their record rather than looking at their qualifications first. So that was the first thing. The 36 states and 150 jurisdictions was really in the public sector, but now we're seeing it move into the private sector as well.
And what is happening on the international front, Nancy?
Oh, well, for the last couple of years, we've been working with the General Data Protection Regulation. That was the big thing where, everybody's still really trying to embrace it. It is a huge regulation. And just when we were starting to get used to it, Brexit happened. And that is where the UK is removing itself from the European Union. And so that's created another state of flux where we're all trying to wait and find out if they're going to be considered adequate, as that will definitely impact how we cross-border transfer data back and forth from everywhere. In addition, you have Privacy Shield, which was invalidated in July of this year. And so while that's only one cross-border transfer mechanism, it is one that many, many people used. And so we had a scramble to actually move to another transfer mechanism to, ensure that we were still flowing by using like standard contractual clauses or binding corporate rules. So people are still working through all of that as well, as we try to figure out exactly the direction that the regulators will be going and what will be acceptable. As they're talking about standard contractual clauses, there may be some question as to the validity of those as well, or or whether they'll be acceptable or not. So those are big things that are happening right now on the front. There's just a continued focus on privacy and consumer privacy. So in addition to GDPR, which takes care of your European Union countries, you have India that's got their privacy law that's coming out. It's not out there yet, but it's definitely in review. It's been held up a lot by COVID. And then you've got Brazil that just came out with their first privacy law. And all of these are focused on consumer rights. So I do believe that this is the trend moving forward, and I don't see it changing in any short order. I believe, most of the countries that have got privacy laws have mirrored them off the GDPR, and the focus is on consumer rights, and that is just us moving forward.
That is a great transition to my next question. So, speaking of consumer rights, I see compliance as a necessary mechanism in which companies are ultimately taking into consideration an individual's privacy and data. So, with that in mind, what do you see as the value of being compliant, but also in being conscious of data?
Um, well, I mean, being compliant, I mean, compliance is really adherence to rules and regulations. I mean, in a nutshell, I mean, you are, doing the right thing, number one, by being compliant. You're keeping regulators happy. I mean, obviously, you're regulated, mandated to do that, if you fall under that rule or regulation. But probably in the years that I've been doing this and working with operations teams, I don't think you want to approach compliance as just something that you have to do. I think, in an effort to answer your question and looking at being conscious of data and personal data, I think what you have to do is train yourself to say, look, it's more than just you have to comply, so let's just do this. But you really have a responsibility and should want to actually protect the personal data of others that are just like you. And I've always told people and trained them that you need to treat the data as if it's your own and how you would like someone to treat your data. So, I mean, I think you can look at a softer look at compliance in that there's a human element to it. And the rules are there to protect people. And that's what it's all about. So rather than thinking of it as a bad thing or something you just have to do, think of it as a more positive thing in the fact that you have a social responsibility to do it.
I love that, Nancy. I love how you go beyond just what you have to do and put a human side to it. I think we often think of compliance as just regulations, but it is so important to think of those that are affected and why we have compliance in the first place. So those are really great insights. Thank you. And to our next question, we all know that we need to be compliant, and it is such an important piece of the business operationally. So let's get to the root of the issue. What are the repercussions of being non-compliant?
Well, depends on what regulation you're under. There could be serious fines. GDPR, has large fines. It could be, it just depends on the severity of the absolute issue that you have, okay, that makes you non-compliant. You see lawsuits for being non-compliant. You most certainly want to avoid those at all costs. And then probably, the worst, up with the human element on it, is just the risk to your reputation for your company. Depending upon how severe some of this is, the regulators could actually shut you down. If you're really not complying, you really don't follow the directions. If it's not the fines or the lawsuits that could wipe you out, it most certainly could be that you could be shut down for not complying and following the regulation. So there's serious repercussions for non-compliance.
Okay. Moving on to our next question. It goes without saying that 2020 has been a rough year for everyone, individuals, businesses, and that obviously affects our industry specifically. It is a big issue as it pertains to hiring and background checks or lack thereof. With that said, I know a lot of us have been focused on the here and now. It is hard to look ahead to 2021 and beyond. But that is what we must do in order to be prepared and plan accordingly for what's ahead. So with that said, what do you see as the future trend for privacy, data, and overall compliance? And specifically, how do you think the pandemic will influence the market?
Well, the pandemic has already influenced the market. There's no question. People are struggling. They had already moved to remote locations to do work. There's just it turned everybody upside down. Although I have to say, many people rallied and they were able to, which is kudos to everybody out there and all these companies that were able to continue. it says a lot for their programs that they were able to step up. What do I see? I hate to be so generic, but seriously, more regulation. I mean, I see more and more regulation as we go forward. You know, as to some of the things that I'm seeing out there that people are now offering is continuous monitoring programs. That's becoming a big thing. You know, that's post-employment, but it's becoming, I mean, it's a trend that started a while back, but it's starting to get some legs again. I think people are more interested. It's not only pre-employment, but also, especially if you have like contractor programs or transient type workers or people that are driving a lot, people want continuous monitoring on their driving records. They want to make sure that after employment that, you know, they've not had any criminal action, you know. So that's a big one that's coming out right now. Social media continues to be on the forefront, okay? There's pros and cons to it. I say mostly pros, and I think that everybody out there is an advocate, really, of the use of social media for backgrounds. However, there's also the other side of it, and you most certainly have to work with professionals. I say really check your vendor out, you know, that's providing that, and work with them. You've got a lot of great vendors out there that provide this information. And, you know, because they're going to look to see and only report what really you can report. Okay, that's not going to get you in violation of any civil rights of any sort. Okay, so I mean those are two trends on, you know, that I'm seeing out there. And then really, I can't say enough about privacy. I mean, consumer rights is just on the forefront, and it really just doesn't make any difference where. We're seeing it in every regulation and just conversations. Even throughout the pandemic, you just continually hear this outside of our industry. So I don't see this trend leaving anytime soon. I truly don't.
Well, thank you. Thank you for that and helping us to look ahead to what we have to look forward to.
It's not necessarily negative. I mean,
yeah,
you know, we're all consumers. You know, so most certainly, you know, when you step back, I mean, we're not only working in this industry, but we're also people that are out there. And so there is a positive to people fighting for all of our rights and to protect our personal data. There are a lot of people out there that are, I mean, I've been a victim of people taking data, and it's a scary thing. It really can jeopardize things. So, the trend is there, whether we like it or we don't like it. It surely does change the scope of things, but I think it's something that we just got to look at, and you need to build your processes and procedures around it with that in the forefront. And in addition, I'm just going to say, just a shout out for compliance, is that I think that you're going to see that people are going to have to build stronger compliance teams, if you will. You know, gone are the day that you're going to be able to have one compliance person that's taking care of the world with the help of their legal team. It's so complex right now. There's 240 plus countries. There's the United States. Then you take it down a step and you look at the products that are out there that you're covering and all the different regulations for each of these products. There is a lot to monitor in addition to all the consumer rights and the programs that you've got to put in place. So I think that is the future trend, and I think people need to embrace it and get in front of it.
Okay, well, that is a perfect segue to our next question. Speaking of that, now we are going to transition over to audience questions. The first question is from Mike D. He asks, what are the first steps that a company should take in assessing or optimizing their compliance program?
Well, that's pretty broad. I mean, because it really depends on the company, but I must say, I'll give you a general idea of how you could start. First of all, I would engage and have a great legal team, without a shadow of a doubt. And I mean, not just any person that's a lawyer. I think what you have to have is people that, for whatever regulations that you're subject to, they are experts in it. Whether you're hiring them and you have them in your internal legal team or external, I think first and foremost, when you're dealing with compliance, it's critical to be able to have that ear and have somebody give you that advice at the ready, and not wait till you're scrambling. So the first thing that I would do is look at your customer base. Where are you doing business? Okay, that's really important. Whether you're doing it here in the U.S., in state to state, we have a lot of different regulations and laws. Just in ban the box alone, I mean, there's a bunch of different things. I mean, it may be applicable at the local level, but not applicable at the state level or the federal level. So, I mean, there is a lot to look at. So I would most certainly look at where you're doing business, okay? Once you know where, look at the regulations that you're subject to. And once you have that scope and regulation, you have to look at, you have to look at mapping that personal data. Where is it touching? So you're going to look at where you're doing business and what regulations you're under. And then you're going to actually take that data and you're going to actually map it. Where throughout your organization is personal data flowing? Okay. And this most certainly will mean internally, and it's not just backgrounds, it takes into effect human resource data, legal data, payroll data, marketing. If somebody's going onto your website and they're entering in their IP address or their email, that is all personal data, especially when you're looking at global definitions of personal data. Those are all things that have to be thought of. Look at the systems that everything is flowing through. And the reason I say that this is critical, I mean, if you're doing business globally, you have to do it as a mandate through GDPR anyway. Okay, they mandate, data mapping. And the reason why is that if people exercise their rights, to their data, you obviously have to know where it is. Okay, if they say they want it deleted or, something, one of their rights, you've got to be able to know where you can go get it. So you have to have your data mapped, and once you have that, that it's a daunting exercise, I will tell you that. But once you have it, it's golden to you. It truly is, because, I mean, you have the opportunity then to be able to look at your entire process. And anytime you're looking to make a change of any sort, you have that to reference to say, if I make this change, what else is it going to touch? What else is it going to impact down the line? And so those are, it's really powerful, okay? And then obviously after that, then you're going to start just chopping away at it. You're going to look and see, do I have an incident response if there was any sort of data breach? Who is that going to be going? You're going to start looking at processes and procedures that you have in place. What do we do with, how do we continue business continuity? Are we working in multiple areas? If we're working remotely, do we have a remote workforce policy? I mean, those are all things that you're going to be looking at to assess the business and your compliance with the particular regulations that you're under. So that's how I would begin to assess it. If you don't have the internal expertise, then I say you need to hire it, or you need to hire a consultant to be able to give you that expertise while you're building that solid foundation. But in this arena that we have of privacy and regulation, I would say that we should take this opportunity, every company, take this opportunity right now while we're in this state of flux and we're waiting for how everything is going to land. And I would really take the time to do these assessments and really look at what you have, how it's flowing, and making sure that you are in compliance with all these regulations. If you have a solid foundation, you will be so much better off moving forward. As far as optimization, I would say that, first, if you've done an assessment, then you know whether you have places you're looking for, where's your pain then? I mean, in optimization, you're really looking to improve upon a process. Okay. You're looking to make it better than it was. So, I mean, are you having any pain points? I think you have to look for that. And so, you're going to look at process flow. You're going to look to see, have you been having any errors? Are you having problems? Does your system have the security that it needs moving forward? Because that's getting stricter and stricter as well. Most customer audits or vendor audits, I mean, all of them are starting to get security questionnaires that are ISO, they're ISO or SOC 2 criteria. So, I mean, I think if you're less than that, you're going to have to start looking at stepping up to that standard, because it's really going to be the norm at some point, if it's not already, for most people. So I think this is the time to take advantage. Definitely do this, and these are the steps that I think that you should take initially to do the assessment, and if you need to optimize.
That is really great advice. And you're right. If there's some downtime, maybe this is the perfect opportunity for a business to take a second look at that and be ready for 2021 and beyond. So that is really great advice. I appreciate that. And we do have another audience, actually a statement and a question, this time from Dmitry Ivanov. So first, the statement. He says, I believe that there is a gap between the business needs to know about its employees, both current and prospect, and what is legally available. In the course of time, the government globally tends to pay more and more attention to privacy protection. Consequently, this gap is widening. So, Nancy, can you address his statement with a few comments? What are your thoughts?
Okay. Well, Dimitri, I would like to say that it's a valid point. I mean, most certainly, as we see privacy rights being the focus, we see a lot more in our courts in the US, I have to say, and then even globally, restricting access to certain types of information, to records, trying to redact certain information. And that is causing it to be harder and harder for people in our arena to be able to do our business, to be able to ensure that we're giving accurate results, to making sure that we narrow down who this data is really about. But I would say, while the struggle's real, there's ways to go about this. And I don't think you have one thing trying to go against the other. I just think that they're competing. Everybody's looking to make sure people are safe. I think that both entities are looking at it. We're looking in the background industry to mitigate risk and hopefully prevent like workplace violence. You know, you have privacy advocates that truly are looking to do the best things as well. And that's protecting people out there from people stealing their personal data. I think a lot of this has come by because a lot of times in the past, in background, say for instance, we've over requested for personal data. You know, just in case somebody might need it, we've asked for a lot of data that perhaps we didn't need in order to get a particular record or whatever the case may be. And so people have had a lot of data that's been out there that's been vulnerable, you know, to somebody stealing it. And, you know, again, there's no law that comes about just because somebody thought about it. Somebody's been a victim somewhere. So, I mean, I think that what you do is you get involved with what you can change. And you become like, I'm a member of PBSA, the Professional Background Screening Association. And we've got groups like government relations, and you get involved with those type of groups, you know, that have people that are great people out there that are championing these problems and working with legislators and working with lawmakers to give them and educate them on what the struggle is, and by putting in place what they've done, what they've knocked out, because sometimes people don't realize that. So I say get involved where you can. Most certainly take an active role where you're able. And I mean, if you're not able, depending upon where you are, you know, do what you can legally to ensure that you educate people and tell them what the repercussions are or the potential repercussions of not getting access to this particular data.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for that. Now for Dimitri's question. Do you think that the trend of protecting individuals at the expense of business is a risky trend, or is this something we should accept as a new norm?
Me personally, I don't believe you should accept anything as a new norm. Okay. I mean, it may be the trend right now. I don't believe that we are protecting individuals at the expense of business. Again, it's sort of like I said earlier, just in my statements to his initial comment. I believe we have the same good, or trying to do the right thing from both companies as well as the privacy advocates. I think we're both looking to just protect people, okay? I just think that what we've got to look at is how do we, again, educate people as to the reality of what happens. You can't give it all to one side. There's got to be a balance, okay? And there are ways to get around things. There are ways that you can still protect people, but also give people enough information to be able to do their job and protect people that are maybe working in the workplace. So I think, again, I just will have to fall back on my other comments and really say that I think that compliance isn't going away. Privacy most certainly is not going away. It's a wave of the future. We've got to learn to live with it and figure out how do we best protect data and how do we work together with the people that are making these rules and regulations to educate them and to let them know what we see out there and the trends that we see, like in our workplace. Because you're not going to believe that, I can't believe that a consumer advocate, we deal with this information every day. When we're looking at records and we're in the trenches here, we're not looking at clears. We're looking at things that have hits. We're looking at people with 5-page rap sheets. We're looking and we understand that these people are repeaters. You have advocates that are out there and they're saying, look, that's all well and good. And this person, was bad and they did the wrong thing and they went away and they paid their price. And so now they need to be able to not, like, if you will, stay on the cross for the rest of their life. They need to be able to be re-entered into the workplace. And so I believe that there's definitely validity to that. And most certainly, I think everybody feels that in most cases that should be the case. But how do you protect people? So how do you protect the data? And then how do you protect people from the potential of somebody harming them? And so I just think that we will come to a point sometime as this goes on that we will just continue to work toward it. We'll work together. We'll work with legislators. We will have to prove our point. We will we'll come together because it's the right thing all the way around. There's nobody really doing a wrong thing here. Everybody wants the right outcome. So I think it's just a matter of educating people and just working hard to that end. So hopefully that answers the question.
Nancy, I think that is a perfect way to wrap up our session here, and we will have to leave it there. It's just always such a treat to speak with you. The kind of breadth of information that you share is always edifying, and it just shows the hard work and time that you have put into wrapping your mind around these issues. Through your many years of experience, to your leadership at the various PBSA committees, and now your leadership at the background screening advisory firm Aletheia Advisory. So Nancy, thank you for being a part of the first edition of the Aletheia Advisory Dialogs. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks, Tara. I really appreciate it. Have a great day.
Yes, thank you so much. And audience, thank you for tuning into this dialogue with compliance and privacy expert Nancy Alt. We really appreciate you joining us. Thank you for watching and listening. I am Tara Lukach. We'll do this all again soon. In the meantime, be well and be safe.
The Aletheia Dialogs are directed and produced by Terry Lukach. Be sure to subscribe to the Aletheia Advisory YouTube channel. And if you like this video, please feel free to give it a like.